All right, let's begin. Today we're going to be looking through the source materials we have on the life and career of the Australian cricketer, Phillip Joel Hughes.
And it's a story that really has to be handled with a great deal of care.
It does. It's an exploration based entirely on the facts we have, details of his extraordinary and very rapid rise in professional cricket, and of course the circumstances around his tragic passing in November 2014.
It's so important to frame this right from the start. Phillip Hughes was a monumental talent. I mean, a left-handed opening batsman, 26 tests, 25 one-day internationals for Australia. He debuted so young, just 20.
And the reason this whole story demands such a close look is that it's defined by this isolated, profound tragedy, an event that really did change how cricket globally approaches player safety.
It really did.
So our goal here is to analyze the material to pull out the defining moments of his career, which was short but spectacular. We need to understand the precise medical facts of his injury, which, the sources keep emphasizing was just incredibly rare.
Unprecedented, really.
And then ultimately, to recognize the powerful legacy he left behind. It's a very difficult subject, of course. We're talking about the loss of a life at only 25 years old, and we approach it with sincere sympathy.
And that shock back in 2014 was so universal because of the nature of the injury. We learned from all the reports that this wasn't just a standard risk of the game, it was a complete anomaly.
A medical anomaly.
Yes, it was a vertebral artery dissection leading to a subarachnoid hemorrhage. And that terminology, it sounds complex, but it's crucial because it explains why the outcome was so catastrophic and so rare.
We should pause on that for a moment before we get into his career, just to really focus on that medical rarity. What did the reports from the doctors actually say about how often this kind of thing happens?
The information it's stark. The Australian team doctor at the time, Peter Bruckner, he noted that historically only about 100 cases of this specific dissection had ever been reported in all of medical literature from any kind of blunt force trauma.
100 cases, ever.
Ever. And when they looked specifically at cases from a cricket ball, the reports found only one prior case, just one globally, that had resulted in that injury and a fatal outcome.
So this wasn't something cricket medical staff were prepared for. It wasn't a known risk.
Not at all. It was a singular freak event, what the doctors called a sport-related blunt force cerebrovascular injury.
That context just sets the stage for everything that follows. A life lived with such speed and achievement. So let's start at the beginning. The rapid rise of Phillip Hughes, the country kid from Maxville, New South Wales.
And his origins are so central to his story. Born in Maxville, his roots were deeply regional. His father, Greg, was a banana farmer, and his mother, Virginia, had Italian heritage.
Which gave him an Italian passport, I believe the sources mentioned.
It did, yeah, which was useful at times. But to everyone, he was just Hughesy. He was the absolute epitome of that Australian sporting prodigy from the bush.
And the talent was there right away. I mean, the details in the sources. He wasn't just good at junior cricket. He was playing A grade for the Maxville RSL club at 12 years old.
12 years old, competing against grown men. That's just an incredible sign of not just technical skill, but mental strength.
Absolutely.
And what a lot of people might not know is that he was also a fantastic rugby league player. He played alongside Greg Inglis, another Maxville local who became a huge star. So his general athletic ability was, off the charts.
By 17, though, it was clear that Maxville wasn't big enough.
Yep.
He had to make that move to Sydney to chase that elite level.
He did. He joined the Western Suburbs District Cricket Club, really committed himself to the craft while he was at Homebush Boys High.
And the results were immediate. This wasn't a slow adjustment.
No, not at all. It was instant dominance. He scores 141 not out on his debut for West's in grade cricket. Just phenomenal. Over that whole season, he piled on 752 runs. So, the state selectors, their eyes were on him very, very quickly.
And that led directly to a rookie contract with New South Wales.
And then his first-class debut right before his 19th birthday. At 18 years and 355 days old, he was the youngest New South Wales debutant since Michael Clarke.
Another prodigy.
Exactly. And this wasn't just giving a kid a chance, it was an investment. And he repaid it right away, scoring 51 in that debut match.
But his whole debut season was what really stood out. He wasn't just participating, he was one of the best performers.
He was. He ended that season with 559 runs at an average of over 62, just incredible numbers. But the real crowning moment, the thing that cemented his reputation, came in the Pura Cup final.
That's the Sheffield Shield now, right?
That's right, yeah. The Sheffield Shield final against Victoria. This game made him a legend before he'd even worn the baggy green.
What was his specific record he set in that match?
In the second innings, he scored 116. It secured the win for New South Wales. But the record was the big thing. At just 19, he became the youngest player ever to score a century in a Sheffield Shield final.
And the Sheffield Shield is not just any domestic tournament.
It's widely considered the toughest first-class competition in the world. It's the ultimate proving ground for Australian Test cricketers. So to do that, under the pressure of final, it just signaled he was ready.
And the awards naturally followed that performance.
They piled up. The New South Wales Rising Star Award in 2008. The next year, the big one, the Bradman Young Cricketer of the Year, he was just cleaning up before he even get his international call-up.
We should probably touch on his list A career as well, the one-day format. He had some spectacular numbers there, too.
He did. His list A debut was almost immediate after his first class one. But looking ahead to 2014 with Australia A, the numbers are just explosive.
The sources mention a double century.
Yes, just a few months before his death. In July 2014 against South Africa A in Darwin, he hit 202 not out from only 151 balls. That wasn't just a big score. It showed how he'd refined his game to dominate limited overs cricket. It confirmed he was right back in the mix for all three formats for Australia.
And that domestic dominance led, as you'd expect, to his international career.
Yeah.
He was the natural choice to replace the retiring Matthew Hayden for the 2009 tour of South Africa.
A huge void to fill. And that Test debut, it was a real baptism by fire. His first innings, he's facing Dale Steyn, one of the all-time greats.
And he's out for a duck.
Fourth ball, a duck. It would have broken a lot of players. But it just speaks to his resilience that he came out in the second innings and top scored with a really composed 75. He showed he belonged.
But the truly historic moment, the thing that put him on the global stage, came in the very next match, the second Test in Durban.
This was the absolute peak of his early career. First innings, he scores 115. At 20 years old, that made him Australia's youngest Test centurion since Doug Walters back in 1965.
An iconic name in Australian cricket.
Absolutely, but then he follows it up. In the second innings, he scores 160.
Centuries in both innings of a Test match. That's incredibly rare for anyone, let alone someone so young.
It made him the youngest cricketer in the world ever to score centuries in both innings of a Test. Australia won the match, and suddenly, he wasn't just a player with potential, he was the future. The conversation completely changed.
But this is where the story gets a bit more complicated. Success against South Africa is one thing, but then came the 2009 Ashes in England. And the sources say this is where a technical flaw was really exposed.
Yes, the '09 Ashes was a brutal lesson. The English fast bowlers, especially the experienced ones, they had done their homework. Hughes had this unorthodox technique. He had a very pronounced shuffle across the stumps.
And they targeted that specifically.
They did. They realized they could target his upper body, bowl very straight, maybe with a little bit of swing. And crucially, they stopped bowling wide to him.
Why was that so effective?
Because it took away his favorite shot, the cut shot outside the off stump. By bowling straight, they cramped him for room. It made him vulnerable to being trapped LBW or caught behind. It was a really smart strategic attack on his game.
And it worked so well that he was actually dropped mid-series.
He was. Dropped for the third Test for Shane Watson. And that must have been a huge blow, coming just months after breaking world records. After that, he was sort of in and out of the team, struggling for that consistency because of those technical questions.
And those struggles continued for a while, didn't they? That period from 2010 to 2012 seemed really frustrating.
It was a real roller coaster. You'd show flashes of that genius, like a brilliant 126 in Colombo, but then he'd have a string of low scores. He developed this really worrying habit of being caught in the slips over and over again.
The sources highlight one particular series as the absolute low point against New Zealand in 2011.
Oh, it was. It was almost painful to watch. Across 4 innings in that series, he was dismissed in exactly the same way every single time.
Caught it slip by Martin Guptill.
Off the bowling of Chris Martin. 4 times. The predictability of it was just... it was alarming. And after that series, he was dropped from the Australian team completely.
Which forced his hand. He had to make a change. And to his credit, he was incredibly proactive about it.
He was. He knew he had to overhaul his technique. So he went to England, did a stint with Worcestershire in county cricket. The whole goal was to work on his game, develop more scoring options, especially on the leg side.
And he also made that big move from his home state of New South Wales to South Australia.
A huge decision. But it was about a fresh start, both technically and mentally. To get away from that pressure cooker and just embed those changes he was working on.
And it paid off. It led to a triumphant return to the national side.
It did. His form for South Australia was just undeniable. He earned a recall in late 2012 to fill the spot left by Ricky Ponting's retirement. At number 3,
A huge vote of confidence.
and he delivered. First test back against Sri Lanka, he makes a very solid 86. The technique looked tighter, more secure. He averaged over 46 in that series, and suddenly, he'd locked down his spot as a long-term prospect in all 3 forms of the game.
The sources even mentioned that this success put him in line for a major contract.
Yes, there was talk of a potential $1 million contract with Cricket Australia. He'd become that valuable, especially with senior players like Michael Hussey retiring.
And speaking of other formats, his one-day international debut in January 2013, that was historic.
It was January 11th, 2013, against Sri Lanka in Melbourne. He opens the batting and scores 112. And the significance of that, he became the very first Australian batsman in history to score a century on ODI debut.
A record that can never be broken, only matched.
Exactly. And then, just to prove it wasn't a fluke, he scored another one later in that same Series 138 not out. It showed his technical adjustments had unlocked his full potential as a white ball player, too.
And while he still had some ups and downs, he was part of one of the most memorable moments of the 2013 Ashes.
He was. He shared in that world record 10th wicket partnership with Ashton Agar at Trent Bridge. An unbelievable stand of 163 runs that almost won Australia the Test.
So what were his final international appearances? Just to confirm, he was still very much a current player at the time of the incident.
His last games for Australia were in the UAE in October 2014 against Pakistan. He played in the ODI series and also made his one and only T20 international appearance. So yes, he was absolutely in the selection frame right up until the end.
Which brings us to part 3, the incident itself. The day was November 25, 2014. The place was the Sydney Cricket Ground, a domestic Sheffield Shield match.
And the irony is just, it's so powerful. He was playing for South Australia against his old team, New South Wales, on a ground he knew so well. And he was batting beautifully. He was on 63.
Can you describe the moment of the strike? This is where everything just came together in the most tragic way.
The bowler, Sean Abbott, delivered a bouncer, a short fastball. Hughes went to play a hook shot, which is a very standard response. But the sources say he missed the shot. It struck him on the neck.
And crucially, he was wearing a helmet.
He was, but the ball hit an unprotected area just below his left ear, exactly where the helmet's protection ended.
And the reaction on the field was immediate. It was obvious this was serious.
The collapse was instantaneous. Players, umpires, everyone rushed to him. They were giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on the field. That tells you how severe they knew it was. He was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital, went into emergency surgery, and was placed in an induced coma.
Let's go back to that medical explanation because it's so vital. It wasn't just the force of the ball, it was the precise location.
It was. The impact caused the vertebral artery to tear or dissect. That artery supplies blood to the back of the brain, so the tearing led to bleeding around the brain, the subarachnoid hemorrhage, and it also cut off the blood supply. That combination is what causes catastrophic brain damage.
And as we said at the start, this was just a vanishingly rare event.
Profoundly rare. As the doctor noted, only one prior case from a cricket ball had ever been documented. It was just a random, catastrophic intersection of speed, impact location, and pure bad luck.
And the sources confirmed the outcome 2 days later.
Phillip Hughes never regained consciousness. He passed away on November 27, 2014, just 3 days shy of his 26th birthday. The announcement was made by the Australian captain, Michael Clarke, in a deeply emotional statement on behalf of the family.
And the impact on cricket across the country was immediate and overwhelming.
Cricket Australia reacted instantly. The Shield match at the SCG was abandoned. But so were the other 2 Shield games being played elsewhere in the country. The governing body just said, given the players' state of mind, it was impossible to continue. The sport just stopped.
That brings us to part 4, the inquiries, the safety review, and the extraordinary tributes that followed.
The official response had to be thorough. Cricket Australia commissioned an independent review, and there was a formal coronial inquest, which began in October 2016.
And what was the final legal conclusion from that inquest?
The coroner's verdict was that the death was a tragic accident, and importantly, it was ruled to have arisen from this is the term they used, a minuscule misjudgment from the batsman. No player or umpire was found to be at fault.
A tragic accident. And yet, it obviously highlighted a vulnerability in player equipment, leading to calls for better helmets.
Absolutely. New helmet designs were introduced very quickly, with extra guards at the back to protect that area of the neck.
But this is where the details from that independent review are so sobering.
They are. The review found that even with the new mandated British standard helmet, it likely would not have offered protection at the exact point where he was struck. And they also said that the effectiveness of the new neck guards still needed more evaluation.
So even the safety improvements that came directly from this tragedy might not have prevented this specific freak injury.
That's what the review concluded. But Cricket Australia did mandate other crucial safety changes. Mandatory helmets for batsmen and close-in fielders, even in the nets. And significantly, a requirement for defibrillators to be available at all grounds.
The emotional response, though, went far beyond Australia. It was global.
It was. The test match between Pakistan and New Zealand in the UAE was suspended for a day as a mark of respect. And the spontaneous tribute that emerged from the public was just incredible.
The bats being put out.
Yes. People all over the world, from kids to professional players, just posting photos of their cricket bats, leaning them up by their front door. It was this silent, beautiful, unified gesture of grief.
The funeral in his hometown of Maxville was a major national event.
It was held at his old high school to accommodate the thousands of people who came. The Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, was there. Representatives from the touring Indian team were there. It showed the level of respect he commanded.
And Michael Clarke's eulogy was something that really captured the nation's grief.
It was incredibly moving. He talked about Philip's spirit being a custodian of the game forever. And he ended with that powerful line, we must dig in and get through to tea, and we must play on. It was a call to honor him by continuing the sport he loved.
And the symbolic actions from Cricket Australia ensured his memory was permanently woven into the sport.
They did. His test cap number, 408, was sewn onto every Australian player's shirt and painted on the field for the next test. And his one-day international shirt number, 64, was officially retired.
But the most poignant gesture was what they did with the scorecard of his final innings.
This was remarkable. He was batting on 63. Normally, the scorecard would read retired hurt, but Cricket Australia formally amended it. They changed it to read 63 not out.
So his final innings is forever unbeaten.
Exactly. It's this beautiful symbolic act of closure. And that number, 63, it became a tribute in itself.
His teammates, like David Warner and Steve Smith, made a point of acknowledging it.
They did. Whenever they passed 63, they would raise their bats to the sky in his memory. It became this deeply personal, ongoing tribute. And beyond cricket, too. The Cambridge boat race trial boats were named 63 and not out.
He also has a permanent memorial in his hometown.
Yes. A bridge over the Nambucca River near Maxville was named in his honor, a lasting connection to his roots.
So when you look at the whole story, it's really this dual narrative. On one hand, this immense talent who broke records and fought his way back to the top.
And on the other, this tragedy that forced a global sport to confront its own vulnerabilities and completely overhaul its safety protocols.
The ultimate takeaway from all this, though, the really difficult fact, is that his death was concluded to be a tragic accident, a minuscule error leading to a 1 in a billion medical catastrophe.
That's it, precisely. It highlights that even in a highly professional, regulated sport, there are risks you just can't calculate. A fraction of a second, a fraction of an inch, and the outcome is devastating. It's a profound reminder of the unpredictable, sometimes cruel, nature of sport.
It ensures that the story of Phillip Hughes remains one of achievement, but also a deeply significant and somber chapter in the history of cricket.
A very profound one, yes.
Thanks for listening.